welcome people to another edition of Random Chat on a Wednesday. Tonight on the platform, we will be discussing issues around toxic masculinity. And leading the topic tonight will be one of our members, Johnson Oredein. Welcome, Johnson.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everyone. Respect to you all. So I thought, I spoke to Mark a little while ago, and I thought this is a topic which is very relevant to all of us, as men. Also, it's very relevant. It's hitting the media these days, and I think it's always good to get the opportunity to talk to other people, share our views on these topics, which are pertinent in society at the moment, just to gather some thoughts and gather some thinking about what our views are and what we think about certain things. So today we're here to discuss toxic masculinity. Thank you for the opportunity to come and lead the discussions. So I guess most of you would have heard the term or the phrase toxic masculinity. If you haven't, then I'm sure over the next few weeks, months, you're going to be hearing it in the news, on the media, social media, if you engage in any of those platforms. I think one of the main reasons is, some people who are quite high profile at the moment have been given this term as toxic males. And I think, that's for everyone to make their own decision if they think that these people are toxic or not, I guess the definition, there's many definitions of toxic masculinity. One which I've read is it's societal or a societal construct which is associated with manliness, but manliness which has a negative impact on men, women, and society. I think to drill down, that's quite a simple one. To take it further, they said it glorifies stoicism, strength, virility, dominance, which I think most of us will probably agree are not necessarily negative things.
But stoicism, sorry to jump in.
No.
Stoicism, that's lack of stoicism. Emotional or
is lack of emotions. Right. So being like hard as a rock, stone-faced. But I think the most important thing, which I see in terms of toxicity, is when it has an impact on people's mental health or it has a negative impact on others. So I guess for some people, one of the definitions expands it to say that, the cultural pressure because of masculinity means that men are having to suppress their feelings. They're having to avoid showing their distress. But one of the negative impacts also means that we're resorting to violence and aggression to get our ways or to get kind of, what we think is ours. So I just thought I'll open the floor up. I think firstly, maybe to have a discussion or to see what people think are, masculine traits, and then whether we will see these as negative or positive, depending on their impact. So I'm happy to open the floor to anyone who wants to come in for discussion.
From the time I was, good evening.
Yes,
good evening.
Respect. Good evening.
How you doing?
Yeah.
And chat about this is great. My name's Blacks. So from the time I was youth, my dad, who was a former policeman from Jamaican policeman, come over to England, got all the crap that we all got, decided that his children were not going to grow up out in that society, decided to train us in a certain way. We went through serious training. I don't think any of even in my own family went through, even though they do martial arts too. But when we were growing up, we got all that. The first introduction I got to toxic masculinity, even though I didn't know what it was back then, obviously as a youth, was stiff upper lip. Keep a stiff upper lip. Be calm and carry on. From World War II. you know, and then it was like big man don't cry, and then you had big girls don't cry. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I got all that, but at the same time, I was getting this training. So obviously, it was like we were getting bred to be soldiers and strong people, and to be leaders and stuff like that. So when I grew up, you know, a teenager, I was one of them one-man gang people that I didn't need no one else. I'm out here by myself. I can deal with everything, blah, 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 blah. And now in the modern times, it's toxic masculinity when I say be strong, because I'm successful with it, I'm happy with it. When I'm teaching the students now in my class now, they're youths, and I'm teaching the children how their parents like me to teach them, because it's so harsh and because I don't take no nonsense. And you know, they're too soft. You need to be harder on them, blah, blah. I'll tell you, like, you know, give them a good elbowing. They need it. They're out of order. You know what I mean? They need a bit clack it up. I'm like, yeah, calm down. I'm gonna get that in there. But at the same time, I'm like, I have to adjust these children, boys and girls, to be self-sufficient at the same time, not to be toxic with it.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult thing when I'm fighting against the propaganda that over 50 years now, 50 years of propaganda, probably longer because of the World War II, blah, blah, blah. And trying to make these kids self-sufficient and not reliant on PlayStation.
Thank you, Blaps. I think you hit the nail on the head, summed up the whole conversation.
Right,
but you know what? I think you're totally right. I think, you know, we've come from a generation where there was a solid need in order for us to maintain ourselves and be able to stand up for ourselves in the face of what was going on. We had to stand up. We had to
is that as
train
black
ourselves.
men, Johnson? Sorry to
say
just cut in, but is that as black men, Johnson, or men overall?
I would say both. Like speaking, like I'm a black man, so I can speak from my own perspective. And you know, Blap said, you know, we're all black men here. So yeah, I'm speaking as a black man. You know, my mum taught me that if someone hits you in school, bam, hit them back quick time.
Back, yeah.
That's it. She said, don't wait, don't think about it, don't go and stew on it. Bam, hit them back. Don't go wait 1 day, 2 days, and then go and plot. You know, if someone hits you, you have to stand up for yourself. And I
Should I tell you what my dad told me?
God.
My dad said, give them a long rope for them to hang themselves with. But if they touch you, they can chat as long as they want. But if they touch you, send them to the cemetery.
See? Yeah.
To the cemetery, you know.
This is how I was brought up.
Do you know the thing about it is it's a new term. Obviously, it's a new term being on an old thing that, all right, we may not have recognized it back then in that aspect or in that manner. But you can always, even in school, as you mentioned, school, if someone hits you, hit them back. Even in school, you could see some of them guys that were frustrated with themselves, you know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you know what I mean? Them man, they walk around and then banks punch up the wall and them thing, and then walk off over situations that they can't actually control at the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. That's the other side. So obviously one part is standing up for yourself. But I think another part is having a need, you know, being in distress or suffering and wanting to talk and not being able to do that.
Yeah, there's a few men like that.
Coming from what I do.
Talking about that, there's one. I'm a dad of 4, one girl and 3 boys. I always tell my children, now listen, when anyone can say whatever they want to say to you, but they should not touch you. When it comes to police, they should not touch you. If anybody touches you, be kind. Say, listen, don't touch me again. If they do, you make sure your response is 3, 4, 5 times what they did. Do not let them, in terms of that kind of, someone bullied me, someone this. No, my upbringing, it doesn't work like that. You cannot even try. But over here, it's totally something different.
Yeah.
My wife is kind of always against the idea, where we are, you need to chill out and that kind of thing. No. You can be nice by saying, don't do it again. But when they do it, your response should be 3, 4, 5 times what they did. You make sure you silence them.
Yeah.
That's how I deal with mine anyway.
Yeah.
It's a tricky one. It's a tricky one because, I mean, with the kids these days now, they're told, if anyone touches you, go to the teacher first, tell them you're not allowed to even show your kids them, the side of your hand or nothing like that anyway.
You actually get in trouble. You get persecuted in school as well, especially for retaliating.
Yeah, exactly. So if they find out that, the child comes to the teacher and says, well, yeah, my dad said to hit him back. They're going to call you in to go see the teacher.
Yeah.
And you have to go stand your ground. Yeah, things are different now.
This hasn't been an issue. I teach, I have a group that deals with anti-bullying. And we have a thing called Martial Arts Anti-Bullying Collective. And it's also a martial arts anti-bullying campaign. The campaign is to go into schools, instructors to go into schools and teach people how to deal with their fear and doubt. Okay, and their fear is a lack of knowledge of subject, doubt is a lack of knowledge of yourself. They both are instigators to being bullied or bullying. So when we go into schools, we go to the schools and ask them for their worst culprits of bullying or being bullied. And they're both in the same class together after school. So they either get referred because they're bullies or referred because they're bullied. And they're both in the same class together. And they both understand why why they're being bullied and why they're bullying. When I was at school, myself personally, my hang-ups came from how I was trained, or if you want to call them hang-ups, my mental process or disability or ability or lack of attention to my actual problem came from the way I was trained. And anytime I was getting beaten for doing something wrong, which was normal back in the day, it was those who can't hear must feel. So I was going out telling people who didn't understand me, you're not listening, you're not listening, you're not listening to me. Those who can't hear must feel, you're not listening, you're not here. So I would go out and beat them up. So I would be dealing with bullies because I didn't like the injustice of them picking on someone smaller than them. So I was like, pick on me, deal with me, try me out. And then saying, I don't care what you say. And I'm saying, well, you're not listening. And I'll brought them up. So there we go. Back, I'm grown up again. And I'm teaching children after school how to deal with bullies and why they're getting bullied. And, I have to bring them around before teaching them self-defense techniques, which go alongside the instruction. You see what I mean? The mental strength.
I never liked bullies in school. I'd always stand up for the weaker man still.
Good.
Same here.
So it's a difficulty for me to go to the teachers and say, look, I'm teaching them self-defense, but I'm not teaching them to be a better thug.
Yeah.
I'm teaching them to be more proactive in standing up for themselves.
Yeah.
Or more controlled. Now they have the ability to do it.
But that's it, isn't it?
Because the whole point of a powerful person is that they have the ability to undo you, to violate you completely, but they choose not to do it.
That's right. Yeah. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you must do it, isn't it?
Exactly.
And I think that's a very important skill which everybody needs to learn. But if you can impart those skills to a child who's going through, bullying or being bullied, then it's vital. It's a vital life lesson. Desmond, I'm going to come over to you because I know you wanted to say something earlier.
To me?
No, to Des.
Okay, cool.
It's just a few points really. I just want to add that the idea of toxic masculinity is more of a feminist critique of traditional male behavior. And we could trace it back to probably the Greeks in terms of their competitiveness, because the idea of sport and the city-state was about violence, and it was about attacking other people, and over time that became associated with European culture. So if you look at European culture, it's based on violence and domination. And I think we need to reflect a little on this idea of intersectionality, because white norm is pathological for Black people. So I wouldn't see myself necessarily as being over competitive or having a desire to dominate, but I realize that because of the history of enslavement and brutality, many of us have internalized that. So we become what we despise. And because our communication skills was not as developed as it should be, because we were told we should be seen and not heard. So we didn't learn an alternative way of communicating. So we imitated the ignorance that was around us. And that was to do with violence, and it's still going on today. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call it toxic, because it is harmful to the individual that perpetuate these sort of stereotype of dominance, because the bad man, the Rudy, the Don, they're all isolated, lonely figures because they can't trust anyone. So I think we need to sort of step away from this Eurocentric feminist argument.
Yeah, good point.
And look at ourselves as African orientated people. We must never forget who we are, because it's in forgetting who we are that we become something else.
True.
And this is why I think it's having the understanding that this is to do initially, toxic masculinity was to do with white Americans and Europeans. It was a way of describing them, because Black men weren't even included, because we were seen as devalued. We didn't have a point of view. We didn't have any norms. We didn't have a culture. So I wouldn't put myself in this sort of intersectionality in terms of, I recognize that I am of a different origin to Europeans, but in living with Europeans, I've adopted some of their ways. And some of the response that I may have had in the past was due to the hostile environment in which I was growing up. So I wouldn't call that toxic. I would call it a survival strategy. So many of us have adopted survival strategy. And as you know, when you're living under survival strategy, it has a mental downside to it. Because when I was a soldier, if you were in an active situation for too long, they would take you out and give you what they call rest and recuperation. Because it's not normal to be living under tension and stress.
Yeah, you can't
for
be
a long
on edge.
period of time.
Yeah, you can't be on edge for too long.
Yeah, so this is where we need to recognize that we're in a hostile environment. We're not the perpetrator of it, but we are responding to it in ways that may seem toxic, but so it's a survival strategy.
Sorry to interject. It's like what you're saying is basically the Black man is suffering from PTSD.
Yeah.
Because we're in a state of war, or have been in a state of war, growing up in a state of war.
For 6,000 years.
Yeah.
We've been under attack. So we've developed responses that we've internalized from those who have tried to attack us. I mean, when I came here, I sort of worship, well, we were conditioned in the Caribbean to see white people as good. So when I came here at 14, I thought they were all good. and decent people until they start calling me also a name under the sun, some of which I didn't even understood. And even adults would try and push me off my bike and things like that. And I'm thinking, wait, what one here? So it was the response many of the time is not that we want to do it, but it's a reaction to our environment. And it's to recognize that we are in a hostile environment.
Yeah.
We're always being over supervised or always being over monitored, whatever. And that creates a lot of mental health problems.
Thank you, Desmond, for that point. Go on.
Good point.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. I would say, and I'll continue. I'll let Blaps come in because I think he wants to say something on that.
I was going to go back to his first point, which was the feminist narrative of toxic masculinity being something that they thought of to say to us as a way of calming us down or making them us subdued under their visuals. You know what I'm saying? So it's like their narcissistic attitude to how they want to look in comparison to a man is the reason why I think is the reason why this new terminology has come to pass. So this is what I'm saying. I would agree with pretty much everything he said, but I would emphasize the fact that it's a feminist thing.
Right. Sorry, it's funny you say that because earlier, Marvin was talking and he was saying, "Well, is there such a thing as there been such a quoted thing as toxic femininity?"
Absolutely. Yes, definitely.
That's what he was saying.
Definitely, yeah. And there is definitely toxic femininity. I think it's viewed in slightly different, and it's definitely
Johnson. Sorry.
Yeah.
Johnson, sorry for me to cut you. Don't you think then that the system has contributed to it? Even as you say, there's a thing called toxic femininity, but we're obviously talking about toxic masculinity. So do you think it's the fight against the man, the breaking down of the family? You understand? On the man side, they always try and break the family, obviously taking the man away. The man's got no say over his family. The man's got no, do you understand? It's easier for the woman to climb than they make it for the man. So that, that builds a frustration.
Yeah, but who started that narrative? Who started that? Who made the courts think that the man is the problem?
Yeah, I think, it's a very good point. I think the system obviously has a lot to play because, we live in society and society says and tries to dictate and tells us what roles are. And as we know, the role of a man is generally not the same now as it was 50, 60 years ago. I think that's probably something we can all agree on in society. But for ourselves as individuals, that role probably remains the same. So as men, and please correct me if I'm wrong, most of us, provide for our families, trying to protect them. And we would see that as probably some of our core aims, try and educate and try and, uplift. I would say, please correct me if anyone thinks I'm speaking out of turn.
No, I personally think that black men are about their children much more than a black woman by single mother would be about their children, because they're all about, I can bring up the child by myself. Whereas a black man is saying, no, we should co-parent, even if we don't get along, we should co-parent. Yeah. But the single mother is more like, no, I don't need you, I just need daddy government.
We don't need men. We don't need men.
Yeah, don't need ya. I can do this myself, don't need ya. And the
government, I was watching a very funny video. Well, I don't know if it's funny, but I was watching a video that was saying they had this child. They were doing a social experiment. They had a child on the bench.
2 dolls.
No. I know Jane Elliott and all that thing, but not the this black doll's ugly experiment.
Not that one then, no? Okay.
No, this is a little girl about 8 years old, something like that, just sitting on a bench by herself, and then someone, a white man was sitting next to him, and a black man was sitting next to him, right? just chilling out, nothing to do with the girl. And then a white man would, who's part of the experiment, come up to the little girl and said, "Oh, your dad said to come pick you up. Blah blah blah. This is up. You're supposed to come with me." And the black man immediately clocked what's going on and said, "No, hold on. Do you know this guy? Do you know this man?" And she was going, "No." He's going, "No, she don't want to go with you, man. You need to step out. I'm about to kill this geezer in front of that." And I was just like, and the whole point of this experiment was to show it's more safer for a black man with your children than a white man with your children, because the statistics show that white people are down with this pedo thing more than black men. You see what I mean? More than any other color of people. But I would say that it's safer, that any child is better off growing up with a man, because they're more about building up the kid, the child, rather than just using them as a prop, a financial prop, or a crutch from the government, basically, so they could grow up their child and have a lifestyle. You know, we had the baby boom back in the day. And when I was in school, it was all about that. We had children, 15 years old, getting pregnant. I said, "I'll get a council yard."
Yeah,
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yes.
I never did understand that shit until I grew up. And it was like all these people were saying, "Yeah, yo, have a baby with him, you can get a council yard," and things like that. And now they're grown up without the youth, because is it CSA?
Yeah, CSA.
Child
CSA
support.
run after them and say, "Oh, you're the
The
parent."
system became the father.
Yeah. And so they, no, it's not my youth. And now I have to go for all that blood testing thing like that.
Yeah.
And then the woman's out there still getting money from this person who said it's not my youth. She was with whatever man at the time. And so the toxic masculinity comes back to us when we start getting vexed.
Yeah.
That's right.
So
thank you
for that.
I think we need to be careful, though. This is what I'm saying is, if we see ourselves as black men, then we need to recognize who we are. And once again, we're falling into this Eurocentric model, because when I was growing up in the Caribbean, there was a saying that it took a village to raise a child. And I could go to any house, I could go anywhere in the village, and I'd be looked after. So even in Africa as well, a child is well protected because they're looked after by all the adults. But in Europe, children were seen as property, and particularly under Roman law, a man could kill his child, and without any impunity, and they didn't really like children.
So I think one thing which we can agree is that, you know, it takes two parents to raise a child. I think one of the biggest predictors of successful and well-rounded upbringing is that the child has two parents. And that's not necessarily if the parents are together, it's just that both parents have input into that child's life. You know, I think my general belief system is, you know, yin and yang. It's about balance. And you need the balance of both male and female energy. To ensure that we work in balance with like the universe and with each other. So we need a balance of that energy. However, I think to a certain extent, the traditional masculine energy is being repressed. And I think things which when we look at traditional male values, as you know, as Desmond said, they're not really being promoted in society anymore. So I think that's something which maybe
because they want.
I do think that male are under attack in a way, generally anyway, because some feminists, particularly on the left, have seen sort of masculinity as part of this idea of patriarchy and hierarchy. And if they could destroy patriarchy, then it's argued then people would live much more free and fulfilling life, because this what they call economy with men agreeing with men to rule the world. And you could see that in terms of even at the economic level, even what's going on now at Davos. I would call that toxic masculinity, because there's a group of men agreeing to control the world's economy, and only certain men are included. And that is where the real toxicity is. It's not the shouting, because when we're in the army, we're encouraged to shout. If you're gonna kill someone, it'd be good if you kind of get yourself into a state. So, but when you have the people in their suit and tie, who is putting people's life at risk in terms of signing a deal with this country and killing off so many, no, that's toxic. I mean, you have wars that is sponsored by big multinationals. That's toxic. But people don't look at that. They tend to look at the facade. So we're looking at male and female, but we're not looking at the system that is controlling all of us. It's a game that's going on.
Do you think it's because traditionally over the years the men have always had the power?
Yeah.
Like, you know,
economy.
Like you know, the middle-aged white man, in it. They always had the power. So now this is a kind of trying to balance the books, like, maybe.
That's a thing. That's lately. That's in the last few hundred years. It's not been like that in the history. Mostly,
I don't really think so.
I think it's been mostly women that have been in the matriarchal power. You know what I mean? It's been like,
I'm talking about like the last 200 years, say, for example.
Yeah, I know that, but like I'm saying, like back in history, it's always been like women that have been like revered as gods. You know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, I mean, there needs to be some balance. There needs to be some balance, because I think male have had this sort of privileged position for far too long. And most of the world's problem has been caused by men. So
absolutely.
I think women do have an argument to say that this way of running society and the world is unacceptable, because it's costing too much.
If women were in charge, we'd have a lot less war and a lot less famine and a lot more care and understanding and nurturing in the world.
Yeah, nature would be balanced.
You know what?
I'm
not so sure if that's true, you know.
Hold on, one at a time.
Go on. I'll let someone else come in.
Yeah,
you say.
I was saying that this country just had the longest running monarch. She was a woman. We didn't have the longest period of peace. You know, I can remember the Falklands War, Vietnam War. You know, so many other wars. Iraq War happened with the current monarch. You know, we did. You know, Ethiopia was starving. You know, we had famine in Haiti. You know, where was the lack of toxic masculinity during that time?
That's toxic femininity.
Yeah,
I remember we had balance. I remember we had fracturing power for the majority of it.
Exactly.
Majority,
Yeah, but Tata was
she was a majority. She was just in 3 terms.
Well, she was there.
Yeah, but she was still a puppet.
All of the 80s.
When they wanted to get rid of her, even though she didn't want to go, she had to go.
Yeah, of course.
So this is what I'm saying. The system is bigger than the individual.
But every single prime minister that comes into power immediately goes into war. Every single one. So which one? What are you dealing with Thatcher for? My brother
my point was Thatcher was there, and
my brother
prime
was
minister. And then we had Queen Elizabeth, innit? So we was. You understand? That is a double prong.
My brother was in the Falklands War, So I can't blame the Falklands Law on Thatcher just because she was in power when it was happening.
Well, they say Thatcher was a bit. Sorry to cut it. They say Thatcher was a bit of an anomaly because she didn't actually even rate women.
No, she didn't.
She didn't really rate women. She didn't give other women no position or big them up or nothing.
I think one thing about Margaret Thatcher is most people said that she did have a lot of masculine energy. And I think one thing also to say is like there was some research done, and I know this is research done on things which happened hundreds of years ago, but they said that women rulers were more likely to wage war than their male counterparts.
Oh, okay. Is that why?
Yeah.
Is that why you're disagreeing? You're agreeing with the statistics?
Yeah. I think statistics they say some sense, and I think as much as women are very caring, I know women in power, and women bosses, and I've seen some of the destructive forces which can happen under women's rule.
I think
not
you're
all women.
Male. I think you're the toxic male.
It's a possibility. Only society will judge me.
Your problems on us, bro.
And at the end of the day, this is my society, so you will be the ones who will judge me.
I had a manager one time a few years ago, a female manager, and when the team started to get too unbalanced. And there was like too many women, she used to put that down to a lot of the problems that we used to have in the team. And she used to say, next people who come in there, I'm only interviewing men, got too much women in there, blah, blah, blah.
Female energy.
Balance out. And she used to make a big deal out of it because a lot of the women, you know, they used to bitch, man, with each other a lot. It used to happen, you know.
Are you allowed to say
bitch? Yeah, and
are you allowed to say bitch, Mark? Mark, are you allowed to say bitch? I don't think you're allowed.
No, well, I'm just saying how she used to see it. This is a woman, you know. I'm kind of talking what she used to say, and she used to go out her way to make sure it used to balance out. So when interview time comes, she's just saying, too many women at this interview, man. You know what I mean? I can't have all of them. You know what I mean? You know, the team will go down if there's too many.
On both sides.
Internal wrangling and kicking off about things. What used to happen a lot.
What year was this?
Not in 2010s.
Okay.
Yeah, recent, not long ago.
I was thinking it's another Thatcher's system, you know what I mean?
Guys. Sorry, Blaps. Sorry, guys. So do you think the breaking down of the family is a bigger contributing factor to this than we realize? Because, you know, you break down the man and the family, which is obviously led by the man and the woman. It's taught us not, men and women, taught us not to compromise, to find that balance, to find that level ground, to come to some form of agreement and understanding. Do you think that is a bigger contributing factor to this toxic and even feminine masculinity than we're even saying?
I think the women have proved themselves time and time again that they're very capable of leading and very capable of leading, and man leading them. They've proved it so many times. But there's these set of men around, they're saying, that are constantly showing that they're not as strong as they think they are. Women are strong as think they are. Like Andrew Tate again has a video out saying toxic masculinity is bullshit because women they say they could do it all themselves, but as soon as they need the road paved, they call a man. As soon as they need a war being fought, they need male soldiers. As soon as they need someone to come rescue them from some arsehole in the pub, they call their boyfriend. You see what I'm saying? So he's like, all this ends as masculinity ends as soon as a woman needs something, and a man has to come to the rescue.
Again, was that the system stepping in, trying to play the father that tweaked the woman's mind, making her think she can handle all aspects of life, looking after the family and all of that? That was tweaked her mind that has made her believe that. But when obviously when the system, Sorry.
So Marvin, have you considered?
Sorry, I have to say this. The government doesn't want strong black man running the country. They don't want strong black man getting everyone collaborating against them. They have to put us down, so they have to separate us from the family and become the father for the woman. That's why
I find this debate.
Do it by myself as long as I've got the government giving me money every week.
Okay, go ahead, Desmond.
So sorry. Before you come in, Desmond, Blaps, are you saying that? And I just want to get this clear that society has allowed the government to step in to be the male in their relationships and in order to provide.
Yes.
I think that's a very valid point. Thank you. Thank you for that. Sorry, Desmond. Sorry.
No need for apology. Basically, I have to go back to the concept of who we are. Now, we've been under enslavement for at least, say, 300 years. And during that time, we were not, as African people, allowed to have a family. So this idea of the family is quite new for Africans in the diaspora. And when you look at the experience of, say, what happened with Indians or the Jews, they were still allowed to have their family. Their children weren't taken away and sold. Their wife weren't taken away and sold. And they had their language, they had their culture. Even the indenture contract worker that went to the Caribbean, they still had their language and religion and family. So the state or white men have never allowed us to actually have a family. And when we were allowed to participate in family life, it was under his rule. So we are not in a position to actually compete with other families because this idea of the single mother, that was a construction of the state. This started in America because many of the people weren't married. And when they had children in the 60s, particularly, the woman would be given somewhere to live with the child with the proviso that the man would not be allowed to stay there for more than 2 nights. And so we ended up with the single mother and the street corner men because they had nowhere else to go. And the same practice was transported to England, where in the 70s, single women and children were given somewhere to live after this particular program called Cathy Come Home. Because prior to then, when a woman got pregnant, they would have a shotgun wedding or the child would be taken into care. But through some sort of feminist movement in the 70s, women were given accommodation along with children, but the men were not allowed to stay there for probably more than 2 nights a week. And they used to have social worker would go around and visit these mothers to make sure there was no men's clothes in the house or things like that.
So to interject, Desmond, are you saying again that the social economics and the government fostered that ideology then?
No, we have to recognize the impact of racism and enslavement. And I'm saying is, we as Black people particularly have to recognize our history. So when we're having these debates, they cannot be colorblind because we're then comparing unlike with like. It's like comparing lemon and orange. They're different things. So we have to look at our story and see how we've come to be labeled as toxic when we're not even allowed to have a family.
Mark, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Do you reckon there's some of these sort of laws and rules came in because of, some perceived behavior of men at the time? I remember sort of like in the 70s and the 80s, like on a Thursday, on payday, for example, it would be wars in the house, innit? A woman coming, she's just getting some pure bitch lick. She's getting killed with lick. And the police would come in it and they'll just say, boy, it's a domestic, that's it. You know what I mean? And then men would be like extremely violent towards their women. We can't deny this. I You know, women walk around with their black eye and people ask them what happened. I walked in the door or something. I felt you understand? You know, but back man, you know, because I'm even talking like in my household, for example. You know what I mean? Like, oh, on a Thursday, payday, boy, old man's gone bookie, in it. You know what I mean?
Up in the pub.
Wars, wars. Thursday evening, Friday evening. Houses, tension. Tension was, you know, and I know that was a common theme, especially in a lot of like working class backgrounds and that, you know what I mean? The man's gone down the pub, innit? The man drink after money, him gamble after money, and then the woman's there, man, you know what I mean? And taking some lick, taking some lick, and no one can't defend her, innit? The police will come and they'll say, it's a domestic. There's
nothing to do with us.
And
it's a civil matter. It's not a criminal matter.
Civil matter. Do you reckon it's because of sort of those sort of things why maybe it had to change?
So you can see why women want to change.
Mark, let's extrapolate from that. Why that was put? Why we have corner shops selling alcohol?
Yeah.
We had pubs back in the day, like you say, pubs, alcohol, betting shops, right? In America, they've got the equivalent gun shop, right? In their local Tesco, you can buy a gun.
And your pawn shop
next to next to women dancing and things. You know what I mean? Strip club, right? So now they get paid, and they let off steam. They let off steam, they drink, they get angry, they go buy a gun, they stay in their own neighborhood, shooting up whoever they cared about when they weren't drunk, right? And now I've got to ask you a question. Where do you see that in a rich neighborhood? Where do you see that trio of you know, additives to start that fire in a rich neighborhood? You don't.
Yeah, it's true. You go to the poor areas, there's bookie shops everywhere. There's off licenses on every corner. Pure chicken and chips business.
Yeah, man.
You know what I mean? It's all placed there, I suppose. You know, there's another form of suppression.
Hold on, one at a time.
We get to eat all the rubbish food, drink, be depressed, all in our own neighborhood.
It's a social climate, isn't it? It's like an experiment, really.
Yeah, Mark, I think you raised a really good point. I think, you know, back in the days, you know, traditional working class lifestyle, you get your pay on the Thursday to Friday, and then you're in the, you know, some men will be gone. They'll be in the pub till Sunday lunchtime when they're coming back. And serious. And they come back, and they'll come back, they're still charged in, you know, violence. And I think, you know, that's a point where maybe we can talk about the toxic masculinity there. That what is it that's going on with these men, or at that time, which means that, you know, they think they need to spend all their money in the pub and then come home and beat their women and then go back to work on Monday. Like it's do it all again, rinse and repeat.
Rinse and repeat, you know.
Rinse and repeat. Weekly thing. So what is it? Go on.
Come in there. Now, you know, the betting shops are closing down. The Muslims have come into the neighborhood, so now there's no corner shops selling alcohol no more. You see what I'm saying? Or the pubs are getting closed down, definitely.
That's not true. Every corner shop sells alcohol.
No, corner shops got the thing because most time they're Sikh. But like,
it's harder. It was hard back in the day, Blaps. It was harder for corner shops to sell alcohol. You couldn't get the license.
Look how much alcohol.
Every shop sells liquor now. Every single one.
They're about that now, yeah.
Every single one. You know what I mean? I can't find a corner shop in a 2-mile radius from here what doesn't sell alcohol.
Yeah,
every single one.
Pubs are closed down.
Yeah,
pubs are closing down.
Pubs are gone.
Yeah.
Pubs are gone. But
society is different.
Yeah.
What people need in society is different.
On a more positive note, though, I do think that with the new awareness that's going on, many children are being educated about respectful relationship. There's a lot more attention being focused on child safety. There's a lot more attention being paid to domestic abuse. And I think one of the problems that men are experiencing, particularly white male, is their lack of privilege, because these things they were able to do and get away with, they're not able to get away with them so much anymore. I mean, I know men in my town in Bedford got their daughter pregnant. Stepdad was getting their stepdaughter pregnant, and no one ended up in prison. But now there's a lot more children safeguarding. There's a lot more understanding of what respectful relationships looks like. And I think there's some positive in terms of challenging this toxic masculinity, because some of the behavior of some men needed to be called out.
Definitely.
And I think it's happening.
100%. Well, how do we find the balance between being positive masculine role models and what society wants in a man these days?
I think men have to push back in their own environment with their own woman or baby, baby mother, baby, and say to them, look, you can see by my history what I'm about, and you can't compare me to anyone else because we had our own thing. We are both, the combination of our environment. So you can't say that I'm toxic if you're the one I've been with all the time and I'm being produced as a toxic person. So come from just me or from both of us or from my parents or your parents, where did it come from? Either way, it's in our environment. So we have to both understand it's just a symptom of our the pressures that are on us, and we should get along more because the children need it. I'm not trying to say that parents should stay together for the children, because I didn't do that, and I'm because I didn't do that. So, but our children never knew that we were separated. They were totally out of the situation because we gave them the environment that I was always around and she was always cool with what was going on. So we need to have more of what I used to call the talk before we start to have babies.
I'll agree with that.
We
Garvin?
love each other right now. What's going to happen if we, by some miracle, break up or decide it's not going to work 15 years down the line and we've got 2 kids?
Yeah, no, it's very relevant. Thank you.
Garvin, you got anything to say on the matter?
What do you want me to say on the matter?
Say what's on your mind, brother.
I was just looking for your opinion, brother. Nothing more.
I'm listening. I'm listening. I think at times we were strayed from the topic at hand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just listening. But in terms of looking at what we can see in terms of becoming more positive role models, that's what we can look at in terms of sort of overcoming the sort of toxic masculinity. As you can see, it's there are certain societies where it's even more prevalent, as widely publicized in the police. We can see what has been happening in the police, and because it seems like it's a boys' club, it has been widely accepted. But those are society has changed, and we had to look at becoming more positive role models. So that's my take.
Yeah, and I would add, we need to challenge that as well in terms of calling out what we consider to be harmful behavior being exhibited by our peers.
Thank you, Desmond. It's very, very relevant. Sydney, Curtis, Clive, Norman, would you like to come in and drop some pearls on us?
No, I'm listening. I want to see if I could relate to everything what's being said. I'm just thinking, some of it I agree with, some of it I disagree. Men will always try to be in power. That's how it's always been. But one has to be within oneself to know how to have that balance with another person. With a colleague, or it be with your partner, you have to have that same mindset. That's when you have a balance. When you have a balance, you have an understanding.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, Blaps, you said something earlier in the conversation about using the power which we have and being able to use it and not use it to oppress people. I'm just paraphrasing. And I think that's very, very relevant for this conversation. I think, if we want to continue not to be toxic, if we want to, we have to be able to use our power for the good of others and not to oppress people.
Yeah, if you're going to say, I'm going to take on this new way of doing things, my mechanism personally is martial arts. I became a stronger person through using martial arts, from practicing martial arts, and then from teaching martial arts. People used to come up to me, and I've become much more, I've got much more things I have to do. I'm much more responsible for the training. And so if I become stronger, then I should become more of a bully. I should be helping people. Instead of bearing over people like I'm going to buck them up, I should be bearing over them to help them up.
Yeah.
But that's the argument of toxic masculinity, isn't it? If you have the power, you have the strength, and then you want to use that to bully and get your own way, then that's a problem, isn't it? Yeah, there's a problem right there.
Even in martial arts, right? Even in martial arts, you have disciplines.
Of course, yeah.
There's the disciplines that keep you in order.
Yeah.
Mentally and physically.
Right. But on the subject.
That's my personal mechanism.
Yeah. I mean, if you give somebody the tools, then, for example, to protect themselves and know that they can protect others that they love, then that is empowering them. But then if you are so it's called toxic masculine or toxic man, then you would use that power to get what you want rather than to protect the ones you love. You will use that. It's like a man being in the house and he's bullying up the woman because he knows that she, as a female, is not as strong as he is.
I don't think masculinity is.
No, I'm not saying it's just that. I'm just saying that's part of it, isn't it? That's part of being. That's what I'm saying. It's part of it.
Okay. Well, I'm saying I use martial arts. You can use the army. You can use being a nurse. Whatever pressure tests you to be a stronger person in mind, body, and spirit. Which is relevant.
Yeah, but I was picking on the fact that you were saying that you yourself trained in martial arts and you teach others to empower them, give them the strength to protect themselves. So, yeah, right. So I was going on from that. That is fine when you're protecting yourself or your loved one, but when you decide to use that to get what you want from people, then that's a different argument.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Well, we reference that as a bully, right?
Right. Toxic.
Misuse of your power.
Yeah.
To oppress other people.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter what the power is. It could be just that you bring home the food every week.
Maybe it's a bullying tactic.
You decide to hold the Mars bars unless someone does something for you.
If he's in power, whether he's high in management or whatever, they always use the bully tactic, you see. At the end of the day, it's just authority. People use it overpowering. Even the government's force, they go beyond the regulations. It's just a bullying tactic.
Sydney, Curtis, any of you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I think there's a really fine line between toxicity and authority and and all of this. So I really think it's I don't think it should be that a particular gender is more toxic than the other one, and saying that this group is more toxic than the other one. Having this sort of marginalization creates division between people, and it creates a certain level of mistrust between people. So when somebody's trying to offer you their opinion, it can be viewed as one thing because of something you heard on the TV, and they're saying, oh, if you notice this kind of thing, then that person is being toxic. Whereas someone was just trying to offer their opinion, trying to give you a different perspective from what you have. I think in the case of obviously there's some people who are naturally abrasive, and they have this kind of toxic nature about them, where they have nothing positive to do with anyone, and these are traits that you'd notice, and but in terms of generalizing that a particular group of humanity has this particular trait, I think that in itself is a failing of society, and not necessarily what we should be trying to align ourselves with, and to try and think maybe society is sick if you think that a particular group of people can be considered to be a particular way just because that they just because I think I heard somebody say when we want roads built and wars fought, you don't see a lot of women lining up for that. But when we should look at there's certain roles that nature has defined, and there's certain things that we should look out for and think, okay, is this coming from a good place, or is this coming from a place of hurt? Because hurt people, and you'll find that you'll find that this trait is not necessarily just for men or just for women, but human beings. It's a human condition, and I don't think it should be burdened onto men, saying that men are toxic.
But on that same note, again, we are human beings, isn't it? So we can show care, we can show sensitivity, we can show empathy as a man and still be a man. Do you understand? Whereas the toxic masculinity is going to show no care, void of emotion, and you know what I mean, no, and within they're empty, they're hollow. You know.
No, I think we're losing the definition here of toxic masculinity, because it's normally associated with misogyny and homophobia, and you know what I mean, sexism.
That's part and parcel of it as well. Yeah, that's part and parcel.
About being a hard man, you know what I mean? Like going out and saying you're not a hard man, and you just a weak person. And
who's that buzzing?
It's more of women on men. That's what I think. I think it's a wider view of women on men when women are fed up of how men carry on. You know what I mean? Because they're becoming far too powerful to get what we think about, not caring what women are about.
Your connection's buzzing.
Yeah, just to pick up on a point that was raised earlier, Brother Sidney said, hurt people, and I think you can only give what you've got, and I think many people have experienced serious trauma in their lives that they no longer have anything positive to give, or they have very little. And that being the case, they are merely reacting the way they have been conditioned. And Black men particularly should have counseling, or because there are many things that we think we are, which we are not. And I think many of us are actually hiding from ourselves because we don't even know who we are. And I think, if anything, this is what I've experienced has been really helpful, because I think I used to be quite toxic. It was about me. And it was motivated by this hurt and hunger that I felt to the world. So I think it's important to get some healing so that we know who we are and what our struggles are and what our goals are. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah.
Thank you, Desmond. I think that's a really, really valid point. I think I would expand that to say that not just Black men, but everybody should at some point try and get some, and I wouldn't say necessarily counseling, I'd say some sort of therapy. And that therapy doesn't have to be talking therapy. It could be art therapy. It could be, open discussions with people, like the discussions we're having, any sort of discussion which can test your thinking and enable you to think about who you are and your place in society and what you're bringing and what your goals are, what your aims are, and what is important to you, I think is very important, because I think one thing is a lot of people have lost their way or they're struggling to see what their place is. And I think, rightly said, hurt people hurt people. If you're someone who's hurting, then there's a possibility you'll use your traits or your abilities to then hurt other people, to oppress them or subject them to things which you've been subjected to, so that they can have a little taste, a little feel of the situations you've been in. It's natural. Definitely. And I think, Sydney, what you said, is right. It's always sad in society when we put people in boxes, where we draw, boxes around people and say, okay, this section is this and this section is that. I think also one way which we understand and we make sense of things in society is to put people in boxes. You see something, your mind can easily categorize, okay, this is a cat, this is a dog. It enables some people to have a better understanding, because not everybody's mind is open and is wide. And I think that's something which we're struggling with. But I think, when we have these discussions, it's always gives us a chance to test our thinking, test what we think is important. So yeah, I think for some people this could be part of the therapy they need.
Thank you, Johnson. Well, we're just about to wrap up now, guys. So
okay.
Anybody else? Well, I'm going to stop recording. Let's put it that way. If you want to continue.
Not yet. All right.
Okay. Anybody else with another question?
Clive.
Hello.
Yes, Clive.
I'm good here. I'm doing more listening than talking.
That's good. We're all here to listen, learn, have a talk, have a discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to say that pigeonholing, like calling one male an alpha male and another a beta male, is a problem that made the toxic masculinity much more prevalent, or much more, the optics of it much more seen.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think when we say, these are the alpha males, these are the beta males, what sometimes we do, or society does, is we then focus on the characteristics which make these alphas more successful, because most people would rather be an alpha than a beta. And then in looking at those characteristics, there's a way to look at not only the positive, which is what's made these people successful, but the negative, the things which people will see as harmful to society. And sometimes what's made people successful is also seen as what's negative to other people. Because as we know, we all have different perspectives depending on what side of the fence we're sitting on.
I'm thinking that the women are saying that the beta males and the men are loving the alpha males. And when the alpha males show themselves to be successful because they're being alpha male, that's a problem for women who love the beta male, because they know the beta male is going to be saying, hold on, maybe I need to look at what an alpha male is and run away from what you like. say.
Can you say that again, Blaps? You're cutting out.
I can say that. Is it that the women love the beta male, but when they are successful, they're being more listened to, and if they are toxic, because the women love the beta males and see the alpha males as toxic masculinity, which is poisoning the beta males' thoughts against the women. Is that a problem is that we need to have the beta males feeling that they are successful as males, so they don't go running away.
Did you catch that? Did everyone catch that?
Yeah. It was cutting out a bit.
It was, wasn't it?
Well, if everyone mute the mics while I'm chatting, it might work out.
It happens to be your mic that's cutting out, to be fair.
I've been talking all the time and it was okay before.
No, it was cutting out before, I did say earlier.
Hey.
Right.
Anyway, if you understand what I said, then comment on it. If not, I'll say it again.
So let me try.
That's what he's been asking you for the 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Let me try and repeat what I think I heard. So, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I didn't. There was a few bits where it was buzzing. So did you say that the beta males are looking at the alpha males and seeing that they're successful, and then sorry, I didn't get it. Sorry.
I think the women love the beta male because they're not toxic to them. They're kind of on their level. But the alpha males, especially when they're successful, have the beta males looking at them like, wow, that is great. So the beta male needs to be more successful in their own right and stay beta male rather than become the alpha male, which the women prize. Saying to everyone, I'm successful. I've got the women, I've got the cars, I've got this, that, and the other, and beta males get nowhere. Nice guys finish last, blah blah blah. Whereas the exact man that the women want.
Okay, I think I got that. So I would say, firstly, that, and I'm not a lady, so I'm making an assumption that most females, most ladies, prefer alpha males. I think and I'm generalizing, women are generally asked what sort of man they'd like. They'd probably say tall, dark, handsome, earning at least 6 figures, a certain height, a certain build, and I would say most people in society would more associate that with the alpha males. So I'd say, firstly, women love alpha males. I think most women won't be with an alpha male because I'd say there's a larger proportion of beta males than there are alpha males. And I'd also say that beta males probably make very good partners because I think in terms of what we're talking about in the toxic masculinity, there's a part which talks about virility, sexual promiscuity, which is the toxic side to the alpha males. But also I would say that quite a lot of beta males are very successful as well.
They're not. What I'm saying is that the women, especially women that I would say, this is what Victor's Black's saying. The women that are looking at the alpha males as, yeah, that's what I want, are the toxic femininity. You know what I mean? They're the ones that are twerking, getting their money that way, doing OnlyFans sites, toxic femininity. As far as they're concerned, they're the alpha female, but you got the beta female, which is what alpha female want, which are the successful woman that is out there, that can do it for themselves, that is still sexy, still got a brain, that is not twerking. You know what I'm saying? But to the males that want that need a proper woman, they are the beta.
Okay, yeah.
So it's this crisscross we've got here is what's angst to keep, because we're not clear on toxic female, what's the toxic male, what's the alpha female. We don't. We're not making proper definition of these things, so we're going to continue to do it. What my rubbish is all gold.
Yeah.
I hear that.
So that needs to be clearer, I think, before we even start to deal with people.
I think so.
I think we should take all these misaligned who think they're downtrodden by women like yourself, you know, people like yourself. We should all band together.
I didn't get that. Downtrodden male like yourself.
Well, I can assure you I'm not downtrodden.
I was going to say, I don't think know about that. You're still crackling.
Talk about our emotions.
Well, that's another part of it. All right, I'm going to stop recording now. You may continue if you want to, though.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you so much for your time, Johnson.
No worries, thank you. I always enjoy coming here and sharing discussions with you guys. I see it as part of my personal therapy.
You see, though.
Definitely,
Yes.
I think it's a crying shame that as men, traditionally, we don't sit and talk in the ways which we used to. And I think, we're speaking about toxic masculinity, but also I think one thing which men we need to do is we need to bond. And I think in the past, we spoke about the men going to the pub from Friday till Sunday, but part of what they were doing was bonding. Bonding over, even if it's just a shared interest of beer and football, that's something which they were doing. And I think part of that is what was keeping men sane, but also keeping them true to the knowledge of what they were doing was contributing to society. Because they know, okay, they've been to work all week, now it's time for them to, to talk to their friends, share some thoughts, share some feelings. And even if the thoughts are like, oh, my team aren't doing well, I'm so upset at this and that, it's part of it. It's still part of it.
Sure. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Curtis. I hope you enjoyed the chat. And I hope you enjoyed your dinner as well, which you never told us what you were eating.
It's all good, man. It's fine. It's tucked away in the tummy nicely.
Good.
Right, man.
I'm sure you said it was a roll or something, a sandwich roll or something.
Yeah, well, it was enjoyable, man. It was nice.
That's all that matters.
Now, you know what? I think personally, to me, I'll just say this. I've listened to everything been said. I think everybody's got a valid point, because everything that's been said has been valid. I just think on the last point that was probably made, I think if we were to gather to have more of these kind of conversations, I think it helps to build each other.
Yeah.
So where there's no outlet, or maybe those outlets have been eroded generally, at least if we can find dare I say it, like a safe place to be able to do that, I think this is good. So I'm all for it. So I hope we have more like this, because I'm definitely about that. That's me. Yeah.
Good. Thank you, Curtis. And I think, I'll extend it out to you to say if there's a topic you want to talk about, you want us to discuss, let any of the hosts know, because we're definitely open to discussing whatever you want to. And that goes out to everybody as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I tried to sort of like keep my heads up with obviously because I've been invited to groups and that, so I try to stay alert of the kind of discussions that we're having. So I don't know, we'll see. I'm sure everyone's got something they'd probably want to be like, yeah, I want to talk about that. So yeah, so we'll see.
Right.
But whatever anyone wants to talk about is equally important. It's the same that everyone's views are valid, everyone's opinion, everyone's experience is valid. Whatever anyone wants to bring to the table, we'll all share it. So thank you.
Thank you.